I'm going live now. Okay, we are live. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our first International Conference of Medical Doctors, but English edition. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today in this evening in this side of the world. So in America, it is evening. Please leave in the comments, where are you watching us from? I am Candia and I am G as well, and I'll be one of your hosts. Subi.
Yeah, hello everyone. Welcome to the first English edition of TIC.MD 2023. That is the International Conference of Medical Doctors, which is a new project initiated by Project IMG. And tonight we have got myself, Subiksha, along with Ken here to host and launch our first conference of version English. And yeah, we are happy to have 11 speakers here with us who are all incoming PGY1 residents to talk about and to share the journeys, their math stories, and a few tips that help them match. Few will also be talking about visa application process, CV building that will be helpful for us as an IMG. And therefore, we request the audience who are watching us on live to shoot up your questions below in the comment section, for which the answers will be provided by our speakers at the end of the presentation. All right, without further ado, let me call upon Ken to introduce our first guest speaker.
Yes, and I also want to congratulate every one of our speakers who recently matched in the 2023 cycle. We are very proud of you. Coming up, we have our first guest, which is Anthony Ramos Yataco. So Anthony is an incoming PGY1 internal medicine resident. He has successfully matched at his #1 program of choice, University of Miami Jackson Health System. He graduated from San Marcos University in Lima, Peru in 2020. He decided to start his USMLE journey early as he started his first clerkship in his 4th year of medical school. He has been active throughout his career with groups that support marginalized populations and increasing diversity in the medical profession. He is a member of the Peruvian American Medical Society, and by participating in various missions in the Peruvian Andes and jungle, he was able to learn more about the disparities that exist in his country, and now he can contribute with it. He also has joined the Medical Organization for Latino Advancement, which focus on increasing representation from the Hispanic medical community. He is with us to talk about steps, application process, and interview. Let's welcome Anthony.
Hey everyone, it's really nice to be with you today. I'm really happy to be here. And like I usually start by just telling a little bit about myself. So I started this USMLE pathway really early on medical school when I was in 4th year of medical school. But you know, my real journey started a long way ago when I actually was born in a pretty little small town here in Peru. It's like 7 hours from the capital of Peru. I was like a good student during elementary school, and like I come from a low income family, and so we won a scholarship to study high school in Lima. So my parents let me go when I was 12 years old. So I started living on my own in the capital of Peru when I was 12 years old. So it was pretty hard for me. In fact, it's one of the hardest things that I have ever done in my life. I had to be academically excellent while being away from my parents and just supporting myself and trying to figure out how to cook, how to, you know, do my laundry and everything. So it was kind of the hardest part of my life. And it was also difficult because I was in this fancy school that I had to be there because that was the only way for me to get a high quality education that my parents wouldn't have been able to afford. And I go through these 5 years and I go into medical school. I decided to be a doctor because I saw myself like disparities within the medical field and how the social determinant of health drives inequities. So that's why I decided to be a doctor. And throughout my career, during these 7 years of medical school, I've always been focused on increasing diversity within the medical field. Like when I was in this high school, so it was a fancy high school. I came from a low-income background. I was told by a lot of my peers that I didn't belong there, that I was not supposed to be there, and I was always considered a charity case. And it was hard for me, but however, I got through it, and I did all the high school and also medical school. And I think that the USMLE pathway is hard. You have to do you have to do the exam, you have to have clinical experience, then you have to publish papers, and you have to work a lot. But I think this pathway is totally worth it. And like also you have to share your story when it comes to the interviews, and when it comes to actually telling your story. I think that every single story is worth telling, and you have to be prepared to tell your story, because when you're in interview, you have gone through all the barriers, and you're just one step closer to getting residency. So you have to be able to tell your story, and also how you got there. So whenever I was in an interview, I told all my story, and like how I struggled, because it was pretty difficult for me to get to this point in my life. And I think like it was just a lot, because like 5 years ago, I was not able to talk about it because I will start crying. So now in the point of my life where I can actually reflect on my past and how all my experience have contributed for me to be a better person and also a better doctor. I think the message that I want to give for all the INGs listening now is that it's hard. Like you're gonna have to work a lot, and you're gonna get through a lot of barriers in order to get residency. But at the end of the day, with the support of different organizations, as I did, like Pro-ING, you can actually get through all the barriers and get to residency. And I think that's why we're here. We're trying to support every one of you listening us and sharing our story for you to be inspired and to continue this pathway. And basically, that's all I wanted to say and share with you. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'm just here to answer any kind of question that you might have.
If you guys have any questions for Anthony, please leave them in the comments. We have people from everywhere actually watching us. I have a comment here from, I'm sorry if I'm not saying correctly your name, Solwyn. He's an attendant from New York. And he's thanking everyone for joining us today. The first question for Anthony is, any tips on preparing for step 1? There are so many resources, but what did you do?
I think this is a pretty hard question, but I think like the less is the better. I know there are a lot of resources out there. There are different kind of videos and different Q-bands. Like you have to stick for the main resources. So for instance, you have to use first aid, and then you have to use one Q-band. It could be like, UWOR is the one you have to do for sure. And then you can use another one if you feel that you need more practice, you need more questions in order to be prepared to take the step 1 exam. So I think in this case, if you have to stay with 1 or 2 resources in order to take the exams, because if you're going to start using a lot of resources, then it's going to be a lot of information, and then you're gonna feel frustrated because you cannot cover all the resources that are out there available. And what I did is I used Birds and Beyond. I saw the videos, and then I started, like, while I was doing the videos, I started doing all the questions from UWorld and AMBOS. That was pretty much it. I didn't use any kind more resources other than Birds and Beyond and the Cuban. That was it. I think the less is the better, because when you start this pathway, you encounter different resources, and then you feel frustrated because you don't know where to begin. So you just stick from any kind of video. That there are different videos out there. The one that is more, there are Birds and Beyond and different other videos. The one that are better for you, you have to choose just one, and then just start doing questions as early as possible, because that's key. You have to do a lot of questions for you to be prepared to take stage 1.
Okay, thank you. We have more questions for you. We have a few questions from Laura. She was asking, did you do any USCE in the US, meaning rotations? How much time and where? Like, what were
I realized that I wanted to go to the US to the residency when I was, like, in 2nd year of medical school. So the good thing is, like, my school have, like, a partnership with University of Rochester. So I was able to go there as a visiting student. I did, like, 10 weeks of clerkships. Then I got in touch with different doctors, and I was able to, do observer checks at University of Miami. Back in the day, I wanted to be a pediatrician. So before COVID-19, all my clinical experience was in pediatrics. I went to Cincinnati Children's Hospital. I did, like, an infectious disease rotation. So after COVID, I just switched, and I decided I wanted to be an internal medicine doctor. So I have to gain more experiences, and, like, you have to get in touch with people. So you have to build you have to network with different people. I network with doctors from Peru that are actually there in US. I send an email saying, this is me, I'm doing this, I want to do a residency. Can I shadow you in your clinic? And then they answer, okay, you can come. So I went to different clinics in Chicago from doctors that are from Peru as well. So that's how I got, like, clinical experience. And also, I feel like the Harrington program for international medical graduates is also great. It's a great program. People from all over the world can go to Miami and be there in the Jackson Hospital. It's a great learning experience, and I think I really encourage people to go there. It's amazing there in Miami. Sorry, I'm a little biased, but but I really like the program. And you have to start as early as possible, because when you are a student, you can get more clerkships. Once you graduate from medical school, it's harder. It's not impossible, but the sooner the better.
Okay, one more question, and this is related to the interviews. How much time did it take for you to get ready for them? And how did you prepare? How did you prepare without sounding that it was like a rehearsed speech for, like, the interviewers? In general, how did you prepare?
I think, like, I prepared myself just reading my personal statement, because my personal statement, it was my story. It was not my, all the rotation that I did in US or my clinical experience. It was all my story, as I told you, like, when I was living here. So I usually just read it, and I have, like, an idea what I was about to say. And I practiced with different people, with my friends, with family, with attendings in the US, and they actually gave me some insight about my interview skill, because you have to master it, and you have to be able to convey your message in a proper way, and you have to have your answers between 1 or 2 minutes, and you have to let them know that you are a good doctor and that you are able to work with different kind of people, and you have to also prove that you're more than your scores, that you're actually a human, and then you can talk with somebody about different topics as well, because sometimes you prepare for some questions, but sometimes they just ask you questions that you're not prepared for, and you have to come up with a reasonable answer for those questions. So you have to practice as much as possible with different people so you can get different opinions about your interview skills. It's just practicing. And don't try to rehearse, because once you rehearse, you're gonna sound like a robot, and and they can tell for sure because they have interviewed thousands of people, so they know when you rehearse a lot and you're just saying everything because you have memorized it.
Thank you so much for all of all of the information you just provided to us. And everyone is thanking you for sharing your story. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to the next presenter, Dr. Emilia. She is an incoming PGY1 internal medicine resident at HCA Florida, Westside Northwest Hospital. She graduated from University of Medicine 1, Myanmar in 2015. She wanted to stretch herself while she was a general practitioner and interact with medical professionals throughout the globe. So she has decided to choose this journey since 2017. She is an active member of the Myanmar American Medical Education Society. She joined the PIMG community last year at the IMG event in New York. Her interactions with IMGs gave her additional knowledge regarding the USMLE and residency applications, and she made great friends supporting each other in every possible way. Tonight, she's going to be discussing Match with the Real Me before the program of my choice. Welcome, Dr. Emi.
Oh, I can speak now. Hello, it's very nice to meet you all. I hope everyone's doing well. My name is Nangin Pankam. Just call me Emilia. So I'm gonna share screen. I have this presentation slides. Yeah. How is the slideshow? Oh, I have to, sorry. Okay, sorry. Okay, here we go. So I'm an incoming PGY1 internal medicine resident at HCA Florida, Westside Northwest Hospital. I'm joining this conference from New York. It's a great honor to be one of the speakers at the first international conference of medical doctors. I appreciate the effort of TIC.MD and the project IMG. I'd like to thank my family and friends who have always been supportive. So a little bit about me. I graduated from University of Medicine 1 Myanmar. As you can see, I matched at the second cycle. So I am also considered as an old graduate. I had the same concerns as old graduates. I felt the pain of candidates who went unmatched. So if you want to give up because you're not sure what to do with anymore, you have tried multiple attempts, and here I have good news for you. Today, I'm going to share simple exercises you can do to come back stronger. Well, last year, around this time, I had an accident. Not only I had to use up all my money, I also ended up with a huge debt. Seeking medical care and going for physical therapy, on and on. It was a difficult time. So I almost became a homeless person, and there was no certainty at that time that I could apply to residencies again for the cycle. So however, I was mentally prepared to be homeless and starved myself because I've already lost everything. Like, at least I must get residency, whatever it takes. But thanks to my life saviors, I found a place and I got food. I held on to the pain and worked really hard. I slept less than 5 hours combined in a whole week for most of the summer. I wanted to improve my CV as well as make the money for residency application to pay my bills and debt. I could not compromise any of them. So from my prolonged sleep deprivation, I became easily agitated. I got lost in my own neighborhood. My brain went crazy. So being relentless is good, but this is not sustainable. After so many tragic and painful events, my anxiety got worse. I improved myself in a lot of areas, as you can see. Among all these improvements, the most important skill is knowing who I am and my life-affirming attitude. This is the highlight of my topic because we must have this quality to achieve success and fulfillment in our life. I'll show you why it is relevant to residency. After trial and error, I learned the easiest way to change my attitude and stay consistent with it. I hope you find it practical. So let's start our exercise. The step one, I assess my own attitude. Like I look at my actions, how I would react to adversities, criticisms, and judgments. So in other words, do I feel discouraged and run away, or do I embrace them? Like we can also assess our attitude by looking at our interactions with people. Like how do we feel about people, and how do people feel about us, and how do we connect with each other? And then I will recognize the pattern of my own behavior, and I'll see what do I like about them, what do I have to get rid of, and what are my fears, what are my strengths. I wrote them down. Step two, I think about the things that I'm most grateful for, at least 5 things. Like every morning, as soon as I wake up, I'm still in my bed, I think about the things that I'm most grateful for, and I appreciate everything that's given to me. It puts me in a positive state of mind. And remember, because we all have to start our day in a positive mood. It's very important. And step 3, I define myself. Like I would forget about whatever people think about me and whatever I have done in the past, and I would forget about my old attitude and my doubts. And if I have the full potential to become anything I imagine, what would it be? Like, what is the purpose of my life? In other words, if this was the last day of my life, what would I think this life is worth living for? So this is the question I ask myself like every day. Here you cannot be humble because you have to imagine like you have this limitless potential to become everything you want. And that's how I define my real identity. And that is my affirmation. I wrote it down. So for example, like I'm a beautiful soul, I'm a healer, etc., etc. And I'm doing this step 2 and step 3 every day. It takes less than 5 minutes and it's very easy, but very powerful. I did not know its power at the beginning, but later it's changed everything. Like because gratitude and having a solid vision of yourself would change everything, including your destiny. And okay. Sorry. So whenever negative thoughts or fears or the urge to give up come into my mind, like I practice this, and whatever I do, I would think about what the real me would do in this difficult situation. I do that instead of the old me would do. Like that's how I navigate my journey. And now I'll talk about our attitude towards other people. So I used to be very anxious and can be very insecure around strangers. Now I realize that it's because I focus on myself too much instead of focusing on people around me. Like I should be studying their behavior. I should learn why they act in a certain way and say certain things. For example, like, is it because they are insecure, they're happy, confident, or sad? And then I would decide like what I should do to turn the situations better. We socialize with each other through our gesture and emotions, so our feelings are going to be affected by other people. So it is natural when people tell you like it's impossible, then you would feel lost. It's natural. When people say something great, you will feel great. I learned one lesson here. People give you whatever they have. Like if they have love, you will feel love. If they have insecurities, you would feel insecurities. Most people say something negative, and now you know that if they say that, they're talking from their standards and their values, and you cannot wear their shoes to walk your journey. once I understand this concept, like I never take things personally anymore, and I don't care what they say anymore, and I feel freedom. So to sum up, how does it affect our ERAS application? So we know that if we want to do this, we have to build a community, we have to build a network. And now we have this, our attitude would tell us how to surround ourselves with people who elevate us, because we know who we are. It's easier to write a beautiful ERAS application. And the real you and your purpose are unique, because you already found that out in a step 1, 2, 3. And your personal statement would show your uniqueness. And because you know who you are, you know where you want to go, and you can find the programs that are in alignment with your goals. You're not going to wherever that takes you, and you are going to where you want to go. At the beginning, I was like, I'm going to Florida. I'm going to Florida. I live in New York, but I want to go to Florida. And finally, I am going to Florida. So I asked one of my supervisors, how do interviewers decide if they want this candidates in their program? And her answer was likability. I said, I'm very anxious. It makes me look like I lack confidence and competence. How do I become likable? And she said, just be yourself. Being nervous a little bit is okay. It shows you're humble. It shows you care. Now I know the easiest way to be ourselves is not to think about what to say to impress the program, or not to worry about if the interviewers would like your answers. And you already know who you are. You just have to focus on the program and say a specific quality of you that can make the program better. Even if you ask questions to the interviewers, you're going to show your strengths in the questions. And I suggest do not waste a single word. That's why that's what we say with my interview partners. So if you focus on how you want to serve, that's a likable attitude, and that's being yourself. And altering your attitude would change your behavior. You become less fearful, more open, and more creative. I must say, you cannot start now and master this skill tomorrow. It takes time, and thankfully the steps are easy to follow every day. I'm also a work in progress, actually. I still make mistakes. And I realized one thing, that I become better at keeping things balanced and doing things with joy. So I can't imagine how I would go into residency without understanding this concept. Like, things don't happen to me. They happen for me, because there is a great lesson that I must learn from this event. The real failure is not knowing why it happens and not realizing who you are and your journey. And that will haunt you till your last breath. So not matching does not mean you're not qualified or you're not enough. It means the real you is so much better. As much as I enjoy my time with you and want to elaborate more to give a better understanding, I must give the stage to the next speakers who are going to inspire you all. So I don't want anyone to give up, and I am sharing the tips on not to give up and not to listen to people, and how to stay true to yourself. So starting today, you are going to discover who you are and become more aware of yourself. So I wish the best of luck in realizing the real you and achieving your dreams and your goals. Thank you very much.
Oh my God, that was lovely, Doc. We really appreciate and we really love how we have presented and how we have made the presentation, and along with that, how we have to give importance to ourselves matters compared to before anything, after all. Yeah, thank you so much again. And we have questions for you. Again, as you said, it's important. It really is important to be us before anything. There is also a saying that goes like, destination is not important, but the journey is. How we enjoy ourselves and how we enjoy being us, whatever is really matters. Yeah, thank you again. Many people are thanking you for your presentation, and
thank you very much. It's such a pleasure. I didn't know that I turned off the the video, I was talking with my expression and gesture, and then, oh, the video's off.
Guys, if you have any questions to Doc Emmy, you can shoot up in the comment section. There is a question asking, how did you improve your publications in 1 year?
Okay, so I joined a program. Okay, it's a paid program, and you would be able to find it on the social media because I don't have any connections here, but I want to do it. So I joined the paid programs, and like they teach you how to write your like papers, any papers, maybe literature review or systematic reviews, and then you would have to figure out your own topics and whatever your interest is, and then you would you would write it and submit it to the journals. So it's because it's a class, it's a program, like my skills become like improved very quickly. And yeah, that's how I have done my publications. Thank you.
Thank you. And still many are thanking. One says, absolutely encouraging and inspiring. Thank you so much for sharing your impressive story.
Thank you.
And guys, if you have any questions. And there is another, even if your video was not on, we heard you.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Okay, so our next guest is Dr. Rupa Lakshmi. It's an incoming PGY1 family medicine resident at St. Elizabeth Boardman, Ohio. She graduated from Kasturba Medical College in Mangalore in 2015. She has practiced OBGYN from her home country residency. It was in 2019, after her marriage, she decided to take the steps, wanting to practice holistic medicine, discovering that the US residency would give her this opportunity. She has been part of Aspire Mentors and Project IMG since its inception. And she says, and I quote, research is talked about in a lot of forums, but no proper guidance is provided. A lot of them are costly. So with Larkin Community Hospital and Northwell Health, I have experienced how volunteering research can change one's resume. The University of Florida research was also voluntary, and it gave me the in-person exposure to the clinical side of research. So now she's going to inspire us by discussing how she managed to take her steps while being a mom and how we can find research opportunities. Let's welcome Dr. Rupa.
Hi, everyone. Good evening, according to US time. Good morning for the other half of the world. I am Rupa, by the way. And just a brief something about me. I started my journey in medical school in 2009. I graduated in 2015, and then I did my home country residency in India from my alma mater in OBGYN, and graduated in 2019. And then I moved to the US after marriage and had to redo my entire medical school steps again. But I chose to do this because I know that US is a forefront of practically everything medical, everything technological, and I wanted to be a part of it. And with regards to Project IMG, I've been a follower of Dr. Sebastian even before Project IMG had even started it, at its inception. So I'm a mom of a 3-year-old. So I specifically asked to talk because I know a lot of moms, dads, parents are there who are struggling, and I just wanted to let them know that it's possible and it's not hard. First things first, when you are going to start your USMLE journey, the first thing that you're going to look out for is research. because everybody tells you that you need to have long years of research or many publications, but nobody really helps you or holds your finger and guides you through it. So I don't have a presentation. This is more of tips that you need to actually do and get down to the basics before you start reaching out. So the first thing would be to do a couple of research courses, either on YouTube or on Coursera. All of them are free. This is for your own information and for your own knowledge. Yes, Coursera, there are some free certificate courses. Some of them are a little like there's a small fee to the certification, but that helps. Like anything with biostatistics or something to know about research, reviews, that would be where we start. Because without knowing that, asking for research is like finding a needle in a haystack full of needles, and that's not great for you, and it doesn't feel right even when you're a part of an organization. So that would be the first homework that you would have to do. The second homework that you would have to do is apply widely, just like residency, but apply widely. And while applying, you'll have to look through their websites, their portals, LinkedIn profiles, because they do put up upcoming projects or new projects that they're working on, and so they always need hands to help. So for me, in both instances, for Larkin Community Hospital, Florida, as you know, is a residency program hospital. But at that point, they had started a voluntary COVID research initiative along with voluntary, and that was free, and that I just needed to email the CEO, Dr. Jack Mitchell, who was then the designated official, and then I got the links, and then we went through with it. So with Larkin, they basically babysat us through the steps of research, where we got the CITI certifications, where they walked us through what are the courses that we need to do to learn before we started working on it. But with Northwell Health New York, which is another residency program, like they had a project in the orthopedic department, but that was posted by a resident. So the point of using LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook, the social media, that's where it comes to help. So when we follow these programs across the country, you will see upcoming projects by residents, upcoming projects by faculty, that after which they would have put an email ID for participants to reach out or for doctors to reach out. And that's where you email and request their assistance or how you could be of help. So the concept of asking, instead of asking, I can be in any project or I can work in any project, the concept should be that how I can add value to the project. Like, what can I take off your plate? Imagine being a busy resident trying to figure out a research project. How can you help them? Can you write the manuscript? Can you collect data? Can you call up and follow up on their patients? Can you review articles for them and give them the information that they need? Can you do biostatistics? So what would you bring to the table would be what you need to add. And so when you give them a specific project that you're asking for and why that project inspires you and what you can bring to the table, most of them would reply. And even if in that project, there would be a couple of residents or faculty, email them all, because you never know who would have the time to glimpse at their phone to see the email and help you out. And that's my specific 2 cents for it. And with regards to USMLE steps, I took all of them in very short time. So I had 220s in my step 1, 240s in my step 2, and I passed my step 3 before November, so before the application season got done. With regards to US clinical experience, especially in family medicine, they want you to show your dedication. So it should be long term at one place, and it would preferably be at a clinic where there are doctors, where you have a couple of doctors who form a team, or even in a hospital where it's a team of doctors, because that's what they want to show, want you to show that you're actually dedicated to family medicine and it's not a backup option. So these are my 2 cents to everything that I need to tell you guys. Before I leave, always use more than one question bank. Start with one as you will and take a second one, either AMBOSS or Project IMG question bank, both of which are pretty good and informative, which will supplement your knowledge with UWorld, because with UWorld, when you're doing the second time, you would have already had an idea or a background of the question. That's not how USMLE works. You're going to see brand new questions. So to be able to keep your mind fresh, and so that it doesn't go by rote, but by actual concepts, it's always better to use a second question bank. And with regards to step 2, the other added information would be to do the CMS forms and all the NBMEs, because there are a lot of concepts that are repeated, especially with EKGs, with biostats. So these are the few added points that I would like to give specifically to people out there. And do your step 3 before application, or before at least by November, because that does add a start your resume or your CV or your application, as you may. Thank you for your time and all the very best.
Thank you so much to you for taking the time. And I have to say that me as a mom, I'm proud of you, because I know it's hard. So we have a few questions for you. The first question is from Laura. Laura is very active in the chat. Thank you, Laura. She's asking, how many programs did you apply and how many interviews did you have, if you want to share?
Yeah, I don't mind that for now. So I applied to around 200 programs, but my focus was IM and FM. I went to small community programs because I know my YOG, my year of graduation was older, but I did tailor make my list with which had the room for OBG experience to be accounted for. And the program that I matched, which is my first choice, was one of them. So that would be my 2 cents, is to not just, you have to apply widely, but know your profile well before choosing your programs. Just don't do it because somebody else did it. Don't do it from a already made list. So for example, if I did apply to the FM programs, university based, or the ones that were too internal medicine based, they wouldn't have considered my profile. So if I needed to be considered, I needed to apply to programs that actually looked at my profile and thought, oh, it's a wholesome profile. So that is what I would like to inform. I had a total of 3 interviews. So interview prep, personal statement, and CV changes are very important. So editing all of them through your journey, showing it to as many people as possible who actually are in residency or who are attending, or even, somebody who is in organization helps. But more important is your interview skills need to be personalized. So it shouldn't be something that is tailor-made for somebody else. Everywhere that you talk, it should be infused with your experiences and what you learned as a physician or what you learned as a person. It does not even need to be medical related, but always remember there should be a theme to your interview. There should be few points that you want to convey to the other person.
Okay, so one more question is, can you share the names of some online free research program for IMGs, if you can share, please?
So I am not just because I'm a fan of Project IMG, I'm not saying it, but yes, Project IMG does have a few forums where they're starting research organizations. Larkin Community Hospital, Florida still has volunteering research. And the other one would be Aspiring Mentors also has a research wing right now. So they're all voluntary organizations done by IMGs for IMGs. And there are a few of them that I put up on LinkedIn time now and time again. So yes, and you can also reach out to any of us. Like even I do still mentor, and I still have a research projects going on where I can help guide you if I may not be able to completely involve myself during residency, but I can anyways guide you to get a publication out in 3 to 5 weeks. So yeah, it kind of works as a team, and you can just reach out to whoever you feel like and start from there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doc. Moving on to our next presenter, Dr. Shruti Iyer. She is an incoming PGY1 neurology resident at the University of Pittsburgh. She graduated from Sri Ramachandra Institute of Higher Education and Research in October 2022 as the best outgoing student of the batch. Her journey towards residency in the US began in 2019 when she took step 1 Dr. Shruti has always been interested in learning from experts in the field and having access to the latest research and education practices. In 2021, she found a passion in neurology and pursued neurology electives at UNC, Chapel Hill, and UAB, Alabama. Those experiences furthered her interest in the subject. In addition to having a good academic record, Dr. Shruti has also published 2 original articles and 3 case reports in index journals. Originally, she planned to apply for the 2024 match, but received some fantastic advice and took her chance with the 2023 match. She received 25 interviews and matched at her top choice. Apart from medicine, she is also an avid writer, debater, poet, and teacher. She has received recognition at the national and international levels. Tonight, she'll be discussing steps towards planning the USMLE journey well and matching successfully in the first cycle. Welcome, Dr. Shruti.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. So I'm actually on vacation right now, so I apologize for some internet trouble that I might have. But I'm going to try my best to answer as many questions as I can and share a little bit about my journey. I'm really excited to meet all of you, and it's been great hearing the speakers who have spoken thus far. Really extremely inspiring journeys, and I wish I had access to more such resources when I was applying as well. And I think it's really helpful to have everyone's perspective too. Coming to my experience, I think I knew in my 2nd or 3rd year of medical school that I was really interested in applying for residency to the US. Back then, I had a very limited understanding. Back then, there was also, or at least I didn't have access to resources like Project IMG, which I think is a great initiative to help students get more information about about the USMLE, which not every institute is able to offer. So I think back then I knew that I wanted to start with step 1 and see where that would get me. And so I just focused all my energy towards taking step 1 in my 3rd year of medical school. For anyone who's listening, who's earlier in their medical school journey, I would definitely recommend that. I think it gives you a very good head start if you're able to study for step 1 and take it earlier on, to focus on other aspects of your application if that's possible. And secondly, once I was able to do well enough that I was happy with my performance, I think I got even more interested in this journey, and I felt like I could do it. Before that, it was, I hope I could do it. In general, throughout medical school, I personally was very enthusiastic in trying to do as many extracurriculars as I can. I was interested in debate and writing, so I honed in on those aspects. For those of you who have hobbies and interests that you have been a part of since a young age, make sure that you try to do as much of it as you can in medical school. That's a huge point towards your application and was brought up in many of my interviews as well. So being who you are outside of medicine is also important. So if you can devote a certain amount of energy to that, that would be really helpful for you too. And every experience that you do in medical school does add to your CV. So if you're early on in your medical journey, try to take part in conferences, try to be part of quizzes, and whatever will help you, broaden your spectrum. Of course, like for many people, COVID was a big setback for me. I was scheduled to go for electives during that period. So after that, that caused a lot of anxiety and set me back by a few months. But the electives that I did apply to, which in the end was only the 2 electives that I went for and 1 community program that I also knew someone at, was UNC and UAB. At that point, honestly, I was quite divided between neurology and medicine. And it was only after those electives, both of which were in neurology, that I really focused my application towards neurology. So one piece of advice for all the applicants who are interested in neurology or who are also considering applying for neurology in addition to something else, make your application really focus towards a passion for that subject. PDs everyone in neurology loves neurology. And now that I've been part of this for a year, maybe, I understand where that comes from. So your application just needs to speak to how much you love neurology. This doesn't mean that you need to show an interest from first year of medical school, though that would be great if you have publications or experiences in neurology. But I understand that that's not always feasible. So in that case, it's really helpful to make, when you realized, like in my personal statement, I wrote that I developed an interest or where I was really keen in 2021. So from that period onwards, I tried to make my CV more neurology focused, where after my electives, I spent some time working in Mumbai with the neurology department. I did a case report with neurology. I made my personal statement really neurology focused. So for those applicants who like neurology and who are interested in it, just make sure your application screams a love for neurology. And I think that would be the most important differentiating factor from the other subspecialties.
Looks like we lost we lost connection with her.
I'm so sorry. Able to hear me now? I mean, I really apologize. I did some I'm in India right now, and I didn't calculate the time difference well enough until I'd committed, and I really wanted to share my experience if I could. Again, so I think I was going to apply for the 24 match, but then I decided to go for the 23 because of the advice I had gotten from a professor at one of the electives I had done. For those of you who are debating and are able to apply earlier, that the advice I got is that the cycle changes every year and there are new challenges that come about. So try to apply as early as possible once you have your ducks in a row. Of course, I'm not advising that you apply with an incomplete application, but if you're able to complete it earlier is better. If that's possible, by all means, you can definitely match even if you apply later. But this advice helped me. So if anyone else is on the fence, that would help as well. Initially, I was geared towards a research volunteering opportunity in the US that I had procured, but I left that to apply earlier. And I think for my journey, that was a very helpful piece of advice. I think, I was very nervous about what the interview cycle would be like and pleasantly surprised that it went well. And I think the parts that helped me were my scores. I worked really hard on trying to do my steps as well as I possibly could, and my LORs. So I think my second point would be that your elective performance and that reflects in your LORs can be literally game changing. So for those of you who are on electives, who are going towards electives, just try to be as dedicated as you possibly can and just be present and be interested and enthusiastic to learn. It'll really go a long way. Just to sum up, once I'm done, a few things that I wanted to share. One, if you're early on in your journey, try to decide that you want to do, focus your energies on US residency as early as possible. It's a very long journey. And if you start early, it can help you a lot. By all means, like some of the previous speakers said, you can start later, but it gets harder with each year, as I'm sure you all know. And then second would be be passionate about what you want to do. So if you want to do the US journey, know that that's your main passion. And I think having it as a backup option makes it even more challenging. Third would be scores do matter, but they're not the only thing that matters. So you can definitely, if you have time to plan, it can really be a huge boost to your application. But right now, the USMLE is going more towards holistic review of applications, so that it's definitely not the only thing that matters. The second thing that I would say would matter a lot is your LORs. So focus on your electives and really try to get the best out of the elective that you do. It's not always about the caliber or the CV of the professor who writes your LOR, but the quality. So I think if you really display the qualities that a hospital wants to see in their resident, and that's what your LOR will reflect, that can be a huge boost to your application. Apply broadly and use Residency Explorer. I think that's a fantastic resource that helped me a lot. And for your interviews, lastly, I'd just like to end by just giving a few things that I think helped me with interviews. One would be practice the most important questions. Things like, tell me about yourself and, where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years? You are going to get asked that in every interview. So know what you're going to say, but don't rehearse it that it sounds like a speech, but know the points that you're going to say. Second would be try to list out experiences that impacted you. Maybe a volunteering experience, maybe a research experience, an elective, maybe a personal experience. Probably have 10 experiences that really impacted you and know those stories well. And it can really come in hand when they ask you a question to really fit that into the question that you're interested in. Tell a story. They don't want to hear a lot of facts, but they want to hear about you and your story. So as much as you can, tell your story and shape the questions into your experiences. And I think lastly, like someone else also said, be yourself, be relaxed, be confident, and it'll definitely help. I only realized that in hindsight. So if that can help anyone, even now, definitely be yourself and be confident. That goes a long way. And thank you so much for this opportunity. And I hope I was able to give you a few tips. And apologies again for my internet. That it was really nice speaking to you all. Take care.
Thank you, Dr. Shruti, for your tips. And it's nice to see how you have pre-planned everything, especially not only pre-planned or planned, you have executed it. It's more important. Yeah, and then we have to learn a lot from you, I think. Moving on to questions, we have Ashmita Gautam asking, what are the major challenges you faced during the journey?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think everyone's challenges are different. For me, I think one would be securing electives during the time of COVID. I think that was my biggest challenge. I knew that after scores that I wanted to focus on my USCE. And during COVID, I really struggled with trying to find electives. For those who apply early. I applied almost a year in advance to when I actually went for the electives. And I think that gave me time to, allowed me to have some failures and still have enough time to apply for the other electives. So that would be one big challenge. Two is I wasn't ECFMG certified when I applied. I was very nervous about that, I'll be honest. And I wouldn't advise that people apply if they aren't ECFMG certified. But if that's the only thing in your application that's missing, like if you graduated a little late, I graduated in October because of COVID again. I expected to graduate in June, but only graduated in October. That's the only thing that can be indicated. I indicated that in my personal statement. And if you can indicate that somewhere, then PDs know that you're just waiting for your graduation. And that doesn't seem to be a big hindrance in your application. So that was, again, really good advice that I received that I hope to pass on. So these were, I think, the two bigger challenges in my journey. And and that's what I think would be the main ones.
Okay. And other question from Neerav Vasani. Congratulations on matching. How many neurology specific LOR have you had? And having a LOR which is other than neuro is red flag or not?
That's actually a very good question. So having an LOR other than neurology is not a red flag. So what is important is the quality of your LOR, not as much the LOR writer as the quality of your LOR and what it says about you. So having an internal medicine LOR for sure plays a great role. Your first year of neurology is internal medicine. And even having other specialty-specific LORs is also valuable if it has good information about who you are as a resident, who you would be as a resident. I had 4 LORs, 3 were neurology and 1 was internal medicine. I actually also had 1 LOR from my home country, but I didn't use that one. You can give a maximum of 4 LORs, and I chose to use my US LORs. But you can also do Indian or your home country LORs, which also, if they are strong LORs, matter more. Again, the quality, the LORs from US physicians do have a higher value because they have worked in that system. But at the end of the day, I think the matter of what's in your LOR is what is going to be discussed. So try to focus on getting that the best it possibly can be.
Thank you, Dr. Shruti.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And again, I apologize for the internet troubles.
That's okay. That's okay.
That's okay. So next we have Dr. Anmol Singh. He's an emergency medicine resident at Mercy Health in Ohio. He graduated in India in 2021. He has a lot of experience from the GI department at Mayo Clinic. Later on, he pursued radiology at the University of Florida Health. And now he has matched into emergency medicine. Dr. Amnol took his step 1 in 2020, scoring 224, and step 2 in 2022, scoring 261. He primarily prepared independently for the exams. He wanted to challenge himself and pursue a medical career in the US, so he decided to take the steps. Recently, he joined Project IMG to be able to assist and mentor others, specifically those preparing for the steps, research, and the entry into the US healthcare system. He's here to emphasize the importance of effective communication, networking, and building a strong CV. Welcome, Dr. Amol.
Hi, thank you for having me today. Really appreciate the opportunity, and I'm glad I could share my experience. So I would like to just give a big summary of my background. So I was born and I spent most of my childhood in the United States. And after completion of high school, I went to India for medical school. So I'm considered a USIMG. And after completion of medical school, then I decided to come back to the United States and pursue a career in medicine. And in doing so, I definitely would say I did face quite a few challenges. Number one was from a lot of program directors. They would ask me that being in the US or being a US citizen, why I went to a foreign country to pursue medical education. And that was definitely one of the barriers. And especially for comparative specialties like radiology, which was one of my main focus or main area of interest when I applied this year. It was definitely overall a bit, I had to overcome quite a few obstacles or hurdles. And I think one thing I would like to start off and focus is that whenever we apply, scores definitely do matter, I feel. You know, a lot of people say that they do have a holistic approach, but I think with great scores, it opens a lot of opportunities. And I think program directors definitely do notice that, especially when they need to compare you with other applicants, especially in very competitive specialties, which I have seen. I think another thing is, again, touching on effective communication. Whenever we interview, I think it was mentioned before by other individuals here that it's important to practice and not to sound like it's been rehearsed multiple times. During the interviews, try to reach out or try to express your opinions, or try to just be friendly and be very talkative and be very communicative. I think a lot of people don't, or are a little shy, and they have to try to break that stereotype or get out of their comfort zone and try to be able to talk and network and, you know, ask around or meet everyone. I feel that really plays positive in your towards your aspects, because it shows your personality, and a lot of program directors want to see that a person has a personality and that they're easy to work with and get along with, and overall a likable person. I think the last topic I would also like to touch base on is, you know, So my journey was a little bit haphazard, I would say. So first starting in GI, then pursuing radiology, and then finally doing emergency medicine. So within my CV, again, a lot of program directors would ask me. So when I would give internal medicine interviews, they would ask, "Are you sure you don't want to do radiology?" Or whether emergency medicine interviews, they would say, "Are you sure you don't want to pursue radiology?" Of course, it was more competitive this year. So I think, you have to come up with clever answers and definitely have a backup plan, especially if you're trying to go for very high competitive specialties like dermatology or plastic surgery or orthopedic surgery. Sometimes it doesn't work out, and I understand that. And that's unfortunately the sad reality. It's very competitive to get into these specialties, especially when you're a foreign medical graduate. I know people who do many years of research in order to secure these positions. And I think you have to weigh the amount of years you would like to invest in and to finally achieving that desired specialty. So taking that into consideration, it's okay to have a backup plan, or at least to get into the US system. And then later on, if one decides to change their mind or complete that residency, whether it's IM, EM, or any other residency, and then try to apply again down the road in order to secure those competitive specialties in general. And I think that concludes or that summarizes everything I'd like to touch base on.
Thank you, Dr. Amo. We have a few questions for you from the people in the chat. The first questions. Wait, hold on. You guys have any questions for Dr. Amo? Okay, so this question is from Ashmita. The first question is, by good force, we say, what is the cutoff?
Sorry, cutoff for scores just in general or for any particular specialty?
I believe it's in general.
I think for, let's say, I believe internal medicine, generally, I think 220s used to be for step 1 and somewhere around 230s to 240s for step 2. For more competitive specialties, like let's say radiology, orthopedics, neurosurgery, I would say at least 250s in step 2 at a bare minimum, or even for dermatology and anesthesiology. Sorry, I think you're mute, Dr. Reyes.
Sorry.
All right.
Okay, you were mentioning your journey a bit hard. Was it about finding opportunities to work clinically, or you were trying to find like the best on your best interest? Why was it hard?
Oh, on both ways, definitely. Clinical experiences wise, yeah, I did have a tough time finding clinical rotations. In fact, I only had 2 internal medicine rotations and 2 observerships in radiology. So whenever I would apply, or even I did observerships in radiology, it would be tough because they would kind of assume that I'm not part of the system, or I would face some overall barriers of assumptions, because when they would communicate with me, they would seem that, this candidate seems like an American graduate because of the English accent and communication. But at the same time, then I would tell them my story, and then they would kind of look down upon of me going to a foreign country to pursue a medical degree. And so for internal medicine, I did definitely had a tough time. With the help of some friends, I was able to secure clinical experience at 2 community hospitals. One was Marshfield Clinic in Wisconsin. The other one was Sinai Hospital in Baltimore. I didn't have a single emergency medicine clinical rotation, but I think those internal medicine LORs definitely played a role into helping me secure emergency medicine. So I think the LORs were able to overlap and be used either way. And the radiology observerships also helped me get some LORs. So I think keeping an open mind, again, having a backup helps out, and you can apply broadly and be able to secure at least a spot in residence in the United States, because every year that you go unmatched, it definitely does become difficult, as the previous speakers mentioned.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Amal, for your time and for all of your info right now. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Up next, we have Dr. Avi Singh. It's an incoming PGY1 neurology resident at Emory University in Atlanta. He graduated from Government Medical College in India in December 2021. He discovered his passion for neurology in his second year of med school. His love for this beautifully complicated subject led to his desire to teach and simplify the complex subject matter for everyone to understand. Throughout med school, Dr. Avi held numerous international and national positions in various student organizations. These experiences helped him develop qualities of leadership and teamwork, allowing him to contribute to the medical fraternity and society using his unique interests, such as quizzing, mentorship, and teaching. As an IMG, especially interested in a non-conventional career like neurology, he understands the challenges of navigating the USMLE journey. He believes that knowledge is meant to be shared and wishes to impart the tips and tricks he learned along the way to help others in their own journeys. Dr. Avi is also passionate about inspiring others to pursue their dreams, no matter what obstacles they may face. He believes that all it takes to achieve one's goals is the desire and determination to see them through. He's here to overview the matching process as an IMG in various specialties, especially neurology, to focus on interviews and how to get them. Let's welcome Dr. Avi.
Hi, Kenya. Hi, everyone. Thank you so very much for the kind words. You guys, first of all, have been doing such an amazing job. Subi and Kenya and everyone who's behind the curtain. It's inspiring, even though we've matched, to still hear the stories of such amazing people, because I always try, it's not just our own story. A lot of people get inspired by things that we achieve. So it's important we still stay in touch. It's obviously very reasonable and justifiable sometimes, because now the process of visa and documents starts. So we are like in our next struggle, and then the next struggle of getting into fellowships. But the struggles never really end. It's important that whatever we've learned, we pass it on in a way so that people commit new mistakes. They learn new things so that they can teach the next generation newer things, right? So thank you so much for the platform. I've tried to compile things I've learned in a shorter, bulleted format, just to keep it interesting in a way, short, crisp for everyone who's listening. It's too early in India, so I don't expect a lot of Indians to be awake this time, but I'm sure that they're gonna listen to it in this time zone sometime from now. But for everyone else out there who's woken up, I think the first tip that I do have is something that is talked very less, but a lot of people have this dilemma: do we really even want to pursue USMLE? It's a long journey. It requires a lot of dedication. It requires a lot of intent, and it's a very different journey compared to your own country's system. I know more about India, but I was recently in Mexico, and I think it's pretty similar in a lot of different countries. And I'm not a fan when people say, oh, USMLE is better or my country's residency is better. It's absolutely about how you want your life to be. Every place has its own pros and cons. And whenever people ask me, like, how did you choose USMLE or how did you choose to go about neurology? It is not to say that your dream is not as good as mine. It's about being the fact that it's my dream. It's what I want from my life. And if that is something that resonates with you, and if you are happy in your career, then you will not mind doing your laundry. You will not mind cooking your own food, because you will be happy 2/3 of your life, 2/3 of your day, every day for the next day of your life. So please allow yourself to ask this question: what do I really want to do in life? First, in terms of where I see myself in 5 years, like, do I see myself in my own country or being in the US? And what exactly do I need to do? I fell in love with this beautiful subject of neurology when I realized that US is this one place which offers it in a very different format, because in most other countries, neurology is a super specialty. So you first need to do medicine, you need to spend 3 years, and then you enter neurology. And that again is a very different kind of neurology in different countries. I realized I was in love with teaching. My realization was that I wanted to understand more complicated things. And instead of thinking that, oh, I am just so privileged that I can understand this, you'd rather need to be someone who can understand it and make it simpler for other people to understand it. I think that is the only way you know that you know something for sure. So the love for teaching, love for research, and love for being a doctor, I think, comes very beautifully with neurology, exactly 33% of each. And also, one thing I realized along the way, most neurologists, like Shruti said, during my time in US, they were very creative souls. They were very passionate artists. We used to talk about life. I'm a poet, so we used to talk about poetry. And all of that connected to me so much that I am gonna live a beautiful personal as well as a professional life. And I can do this for the rest of my life with a smile on my face. Again, it is not to say that your dream of becoming a surgeon or your dream of becoming a medicine person is not better than mine, or mine is better than yours. It's about you need to feel that connected with what you're going to do for the rest of your life. There are a lot of reasons people don't become neurologists. The prognosis is not always the best, but then there are reasons you want to do it. So you need to find your own reason. Tip number 2 is starting very methodically from the process of step 1, step 2, step 3. A lot of times we go to our seniors and we ask, like, oh, what resources did you use, or what is the way you did your UWorld? But I think I have been always a promoter of the fact that you have lived with yourself for the last 25 years. No one knows how you study like you do. So how can you expect someone to tell me, like, oh, study like this or study like that? I know most people do their UWorld twice, like one is a systemic pass and then it's a randomized pass. But I know I'm someone who loves to read between the lines, and it takes me a lot of time. So I knew I will never be able to do my UWorld twice. So I did my UWorld only once on random with all subjects mixed and matched. And that is, again, not to say that is how you should do, but you should know how you function best. If you are someone who reads bigger books and remembers less, that's okay. But if you're someone who reads smaller books and remembers everything, that's equally fine. If you don't like sketchy, that's fine. No one should fight you with it. But if you love sketchy, even that is fine. So listen all the advice that is in the air, but you need to do what works for you the best. You are your best judge. The next thing is, I think, one of the most important realizations I had along my journey. I applied only for neurology, which again, I think can be a plus, can be a minus, but it at least made me focus that this is what I want. I don't mind applying in another cycle again, but this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. That helped my CV become very focused. Like Shruti said, it makes most sense to me. You have 3 neuro letters and 1 internal medicine letter, but somehow things worked out for me in a way that I had all my neurology letters, which is not necessarily a plus or a minus. All you need to do is make it be sold like that. And I happened to get 20 neurology interviews throughout the season. And one thing I realized along the way is I cannot make everyone happy. My application can only be true to myself. My personal statement can be true to myself. But I think it's a reasonable parameter to think when you think, should I put this in my CV? Should I put this in my personal statement? We overthink a lot. And I think the only question you need to ask yourself in that moment is, what would I like if I were a program director? Because the same people like you are program directors. They are as much humans. They like the same things. If it's not a rule that they don't like grammatical mistakes. You would not like grammatical mistakes if you were a program director, right? It's the same logic. If I was a neurology program director, I would love to know that how focused you are with neurology. So I think it's a reasonable parameter to think, would I like this if this went in my CV? A very specific example that I had was because I was a medical poet and I've written 13 poems about medical topics, and that is something very close to my heart. And when I was supposed to write my personal statement, I did ask a few people like I don't want to just write that I do poetry, because anyone can write that. I know the content that goes inside my poems. I know the emotion that goes inside my poems. I really want to consider putting my poem inside the personal statement. And there were a lot of varied opinions. People said, it's risky. Are you sure you want to put a poem inside? And I was like, yeah, I don't want to risk it. Let me play a safe game. But then what I did, I was like, I know when once a neurologist person reads that poem that I've written on autism, they are going to relate to me in a way which I cannot, but just by writing that, oh, I do medical poetry. And let me just be smart about it. We don't have any limit for the space that we have in a personal statement. Although the unsaid rule is it has to be one page. So my first page was a conventional personal statement. I wrote everything myself, what I wanted to be told about myself. But on the second page, I had a poem on autism. So it was a safe play in the sense that, okay, if someone wants to read it, good enough. If someone doesn't want to read it, they have the first page. And amongst my 20 interviews, 17 interview people asked me, how did medical poetry happen to you? We loved your poem and it tells us so much about yourself. And all I thought in the moment was, would I like it if I were a program director? Because if I'm seeing hundreds of CVs and if I see this poem, I'm at least going to stop and check, wait, what is this? And I think that is what your application needs to do, because you have to understand it's a numbers game. I expected to get interviews from certain places and I did not from certain places. And all of it is a numbers game. You have to make sure you get the maximum number of interviews, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. So stand out, be unique, don't lie, because I had one hobby that I had written was logo designing. And one of my interviewers just asked me, oh, do you design logos? I want to have a look at them. And I somehow had them in my phone in a file and I showed him, and he was so happy that suddenly built a lot of credibility on me that he's written something and he has it with him. So make sure everything that goes in your CV, you have it with you. And no one's going to ask you for certificates. Or if I have 150 volunteer experiences and I've written them, no one's going to ask for certificates. But my proof is if I can talk with passion about them. And I had to actually filter things that I want to talk about. So I think just don't run behind certificates, run behind experiences that talk to you. The next important tip I have is I see a lot of people approaching me who are like, we've done this, we did not get a visa, we only got a telerotation, or we have a clinical experience not in a hospital, but only in a community clinic. How do you expect that a program is going to consider you a good match if you are not confident about things you have done yourself? I will give you an example. I was struggling with my visa process during my season initially, and I went for a telerotation, and then I got my visa and I did 3 physical rotations in neurology as well. But now if I sell it like that, it comes across, oh, it's a sad story. This guy didn't get his visa, so he has 3 physical rotations and 1 telerotation. So there's obviously it's not as good as 4 physical rotations, but that depends on how you sell it. If you open my CV and if you check my application, this is how it sells. You need 3 mandatory kind of physical rotation experiences, which I have across different systems. But now the medicine system and your system, your university also has a lot of teleconsultations. So I have experience with the tele as well. I'm actually better than a person who has no experience with the tele, because I can sell myself on both the platforms. So if I come across as someone who is confident with his own story, who can sell himself better than a person who has done more things in a conventional way, I think that positivity is infectious, and you have to believe in your own journey. Even if you've done all tellies, even if you've done clinical experiences at places you think aren't as good, it's about what you've learned, and your story is not the same as anyone else's. So make sure you believe that. A few small tips, I will not talk about them a lot because I know there are amazing people who've talked about it already. Networking is real. That is different from contacts. Even if I have a lot of family in the US, I don't have any contacts in a way which could help me get an interview just like that. But networking in terms of wherever you do your clinical rotations, leave an impact like that, that I had my clinical attendings call the university programs that this guy is amazing, we need you to have him. And I did not know the value of contacts then. And I realized later that it's important to work your best level wherever you go, because that will help you get a quality LOR, and it will also help you get interviews. And again, if you tell 10 people to help you out, just expect 1 out of those 10 is going to help, but it's still worth trying. That's what the numbers game is. The next thing is, if whoever says that scores aren't as important, or it's okay, you can work around. Yes, you can work around, but I think the most important objective parameter now as an IMG is your step 2 score. So work over them, really important. Do everything. Everything is going to help you out. But again, if I tell you to think as a program director, what filter are you going to use? That's the step 2 score, nothing else. So that's going to help you get an increase in the number of interviews. Don't compromise on your step 2 score for anything, for research, for clinical experience, anything. Even if you want to take 1 more year, if you're underconfident, I would even say it's worth it if you're going to score a 260. I had a 261, and I think that was the major reason I got a lot of interviews on my step. I'm not saying that 230 people don't match, 220 people don't match, they do, but I want you to make the best of your potential so that your journey is easier. You have more time to do other things by then. My advice would be absolutely different if you come to me and you say, I have a 230. It's okay, it's not the end of the world. You can match your game. But as of now, if you haven't given your step 2, focus on it, like really a lot, especially as an IMG. Interviews, be yourself. Great advice by everyone who's given here. But frankly, I realized I had 2 internal medicine prelim interviews, and the rest were neurology. And I couldn't practice a lot because I was like, I don't know what to prepare. I can't prepare every question in the world. So let me be just myself. And one great advice that I got, and I share it with everyone, is that once you are in the interview, they want you, they like you. There's only so many ways you can mess it up. If you can talk to them, they like you, they want you. But also know that this is as much their interview. You want to make sure, do you want to go to them? They are trying to convince you to get you. So you have to ask the right questions. You have to come across as a person who's interested in their program, research about them, ask them, oh, you have these fellowships, you have a stroke mobile unit. I really want to do that. Or I want to do neurocognitive in my life as a fellowship. Do you have that? Ask those questions, because you want to be at a place that helps you in the future. Just don't go to any place that you think that will be fine for you. So the city matters. If you are a party person, if you are a person who wants to be a teacher, the university matters. So you have to make those priorities according to those things. Write your personal statement yourself. I think I've talked enough about my personal statement. One important thing, again, I'm not the most hardworking person on earth for sure. I'm not the most organized person on earth for sure. I have seen much better people than me. But when it came to my USMLE journey, I organized all my documents in a Google Drive with everything labeled, and all of it helps so much. Whenever I did my US clinical experience, I used to make a document of every case I saw every day. That document helped me when I sent it to the attendings to get my LOR as a bulleted form, because they don't remember every person who comes to them. But if you've written things, what you've done, they have an idea about what you've done, and they can write good things about you. That same document helped me with while I wrote my era CV. So be organized, even if you are inherently not a very organized person like me. If I can do it, I'm sure like you can definitely do it, and way better than me. And again, a lot of questions I think I can be able to answer by giving this one statement, that not one thing breaks or makes your application. A lot of people come to me like, oh, I have only 2 research experiences. I have 5 or 6 publications. None of them are PubMed indexed, but they are real neurology interest focused things. I have 1 case report, which is on progressive multifocal leukoencephalopathy. I have 1 research on circadian rhythm disorders. But all of it, instead of saying, is it published in PubMed or not, it says about my interest in neurology. It's in different stages. So no one's going to see, oh, if you are not PubMed indexed, you are out of the league. Your whole application has to speak about you. Yes, there are certain specialties which require a lot of research, but don't think that just if you're not applying this year, you did not match, and you just do a lot of research this next year, that your application will suddenly become a golden application. It's not. You have to look at all of it. I did get a research opportunity from Mayo, Florida, and it was a very tough decision that I had to leave it. I left it. I called them that I really want to do it, but I left it because I was trying for an H-1B visa. And I had only like a 10% shot on getting an H-1B visa because only 2 of my 20 places offered me that. Because if I took the research J1, I would never get an H-1B. And somehow it all worked out. I matched at my top choice of Emory. I got an H-1B visa. So not doing research did not break me. So you have to understand, look at your package as a whole completely. Those were a few of my tips that I had, but there are 2 messages that I would want to end this with, which I think are super important. A lot of people, especially in India, and I think a lot of developing countries, they say that, oh, you're such a brainy child, you're going to leave your country, you're not going to help your own country, and you're going to go to another country. But I like to think of the world as a place without borders. If I become the best possible neurologist that I can be, I'm not just going to help Americans. I'm not just going to help Indians. I'm going to help the world as a whole. And I think that's something that keeps you going. You need to go to the place that offers everything that you need to do in life. I have to understand how to teach better. I have to understand how to research better. If those are my passions, that is the reason I'm going to US. And that is the reason I just didn't want to match anywhere. I wanted to match where I wanted to match, because those are the places that offer me the things that I can do to help the world better. So be ready with your answer wherever you match, that you're going to help the world, not just India or Mexico or somewhere in Latin America or America. It's everywhere. And the second most important message I have that I do spread through my YouTube channel as well. I do try to make a few videos about step 1 and step 2, but there's a lot of negativity in certain places because of over competition, that if you help people out, they're going to take your seat, and you should keep your tips and tricks to yourself. But I like to think USMLE is a beautiful process. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. You are not going to survive alone. You will need help from people, and you have to help other people. Walk together. There's a lot of seats for every passionate person. It's a place they will let seats go vacant if they don't find the right spot. So no one is taking your seat if you want it real bad. So pass your knowledge, learn things, like be a kind person. That makes you feel really good about yourself. Use these platforms. PIMG is doing a great job. So I think all of us are extremely lucky to be able to share things that we've learned. And that is not to say that we know everything, but we want you to not do the mistakes that we did, so that you make new mistakes, you help people in newer ways, and we keep learning from you as much you learn from us. So thank you so much. I hope I didn't take too much time. And thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abhi. And in the comments, they're thanking you, and all of us thanking you for such a positive energy. We love it. And yeah, they're asking a few questions for you. The first one is, how did you know so early, like as a second year, that neurology was your passion? Like, how did you know?
Perfect. Love the question. Okay, I will start by saying something very controversial. I was someone who wasn't really sure who wanted to be a doctor. Very honestly, my dad is an orthopedic surgeon. My mom is an ophthalmologist. But I was like, I just love physics, chemistry, and biology. I want to understand how the human body works, but I don't know if I really want to be a doctor. I'm someone who has a very varied routine. I like to party. I like to study. I like to watch movies. But this one day, I'm sitting in my college's medical ground, and everyone's so scared of neurology whenever neuroanatomy happens. And I'm like, okay, let me just try explain how circle of Willis is not a 2-dimensional structure. It's a 3-dimensional structure with my hands. And my batchmates are sitting right alongside me, and they're like, they have a shine in their eyes, and they're like, no one explained it to us like this ever before. And that shine that I saw made me feel that I think this is my calling. Like, I understand the logic that neurology has within our body well, and I want to make it easy for people. I want to make them not afraid of neurophobia. And neurology helps me with a few things, because it's not just being a doctor, it's as much being a scientist, it's as much being a teacher. But at the same time, I think, no disrespect to any other specialty, but we kind of know everything about every other organ of the body. Your heart is a pump, you know how it works, you know everything that can go wrong with your heart. But I think our brain is like an ocean right now. We know everything about a neuron, but we just know 1% or 2% things about brain as a whole when neurons come together. So there's a lot of research possibilities, and all this justification one side, this subject talks to me. And if there's any subject that talks to you like that, I think that is your calling. That is what you should go with. But definitely give neurology a chance, and don't just run away from it thinking it's a very difficult subject and you won't understand it. It has one of the most beautiful people, and if you want to know more about neurology, I think there are great neurologists with us. You can always follow everyone else. Yeah.
Thank you. One more question. And this question, actually, I see it every time. It's, should we take step 3 before the interview season?
Okay, so this is somehow God's way of telling, how did I not talk about step 3? So thank you for that question. I think this is one unique thing I really want to tell a lot of people. So the consensus in the air is what everyone knows, if at all, that step 3 is an optional exam that you may or may not take before matching into residency. And most people, a lot of people do take it either during their residency or after matching before their residency begins. But I will tell you one of my experiences in 2 of my interviews. When I went for my US clinical experience, I started studying for my step 3 alongside, because I wanted to score well. I love the fact that if I want to talk about step 3, help people, then I should be in a space where I score well and I can tell people about it. But when I matched, I got my scores on September 22nd. I gave my exam on September 2nd, so that my step 3 application goes with the scores. And although it is not in a filtering criteria, you will not get out of any interview. But in 2 of my interviews, people told me that, how did you manage to give your step 3 along with your US clinical experience, along with your scores and step 1, step 2, and you did so well in the last 2 years. We are so impressed. And honestly, I was in the process. I just liked doing it. But I realized one thing, that giving step 3 before matching is neutral, okay, but 50-60% people do see it as a big positive. So it's going to give an impetus for sure. So I'm not saying that delay your match cycle if you've not given your step 3. Go match without giving your step 3 if that helps you improve your year of graduation. But if there's a possibility that you can give your step 3, that is definitely a plus. And again, just don't focus on clearing it, get a decent score. But as an IMG, I would say that definitely goes into the eyes of a lot of program directors. They see you as a hardworking person. They see you as someone who's because for them, it's a liability if you've not given their step 3. There's a possibility that you can fail. There's a possibility that they need to give you like 2 days of leaves and everything. You are giving them the bonus that I'm done with it. I've got a good score and I'm going to help you increase your match pass rate. So if you can, big advice, golden words, give your step 3, if at all.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abby.
Thank you so much, Kenya.
Thank you, Dr. Avi. Our next speaker is Dr. Kampal Mohan, incoming pediatric resident at Eastern Virginia Medical School. She has graduated from Jawaharlal Nehru Medical College, Belgaum, India. She always had a dream to pursue her master's in the USA and work towards that goal for her second year of MBBS. Having lived in the USA as a child, she always wanted to gain global exposure to practice medicine. The support of her elder sister who also pursued USMLE, aided Dr. Kumpal's USMLE journey. During her medical school, she was a part of the Medical Students Association of India, through which she conducted and participated in multiple volunteering events. She will be sharing with us a few tips that helped during her USMLE journey. Welcome, Dr. Kumpal.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm so excited to share some of my tips from my journey. Let me just try to screen share again. Okay. Okay, I think there's some issue with the screen sharing, but that's not an issue. I will let you know everything that I have to share today. So I think the first thing to do is to make a timeline. So whenever you have decided that USMLE is the journey you would like to pursue, it's really important to know which math season you're planning to apply to, and then using that to work backwards and know when you would like to give your step 1, your step 2, your US clinical experiences, and your step 3. Apart from that, as the other speakers already mentioned, networking is definitely key. There's so many ideas and information out there, and it's really helpful to collaborate with other people and share what information you know with others so that they can also help you and guide you in the right direction. Networking also reminds you that you are not alone. Apart from networking, it's important to find a buddy during this journey. I think having a buddy is anybody who can tell you, how to prepare for step 1, keep you motivated during the journey. And along with that, during the application season, it's nice to discuss what programs you should apply to based on your cutoffs and based on your visa requirements. It's also nice to have someone to help prepare for the interviews by doing mock sessions. Apart from finding a buddy, try to find a mentor. A mentor can be anybody who has priorly applied, who is currently a resident, or maybe a senior from your college. They can help you to see the bigger picture and guide you in the right direction. So apart from finding people and networking, the journey along the way also includes having volunteering opportunities. When you volunteer, it really gives you a chance to give back to the society. And most importantly, it also teaches you how to work in a team. And I think that's something that's really valued by all programs, because during your residency, you will always be working with other people. And so teamwork is a really important skill to learn. By volunteering, you're also showing your dedication to help people outside of your medical school. Coming to the US clinical experience, it's really important to make the most of it. Try to get your clinical experience in different cities across the states. Try to do it in both your university hospital settings as well as your community hospital settings, and try to get hands-on experiences. Another tip that helped me was to show my interest in research and volunteering while I was doing my clinical experiences. I connected with medical students and other residents to gain their perspective on the US healthcare system and how they tackle different situations. Lastly, I also connected with the program coordinators and the program directors to let them know that I'm interested and I'll be applying for this match season. So coming closer to the application season, a lot of programs hold an open house, and I found it helpful to attend the open houses because it helps reduce your anxiety for the interview day as you get a feel of the virtual setting. At the same time, you can clarify any doubts that you have had about the program by speaking to the residents or the program directors. It also shows your interest in that program. During the application season, try to be ECFMG certified before submitting your application, so it makes you look like a more complete applicant. At the same time, make your passion shine with the help of your personal statement, with your CV, and all the research and volunteering experiences that you have. Coming to the interview season, which is nearing the finishing line, it's important to know your interviewers. It's helpful to know what your interviewers are interested in, what their passions are, and what research they may have done. This can be used to talk about during your interviews, as a question to ask them. And at the same time, know more about the program you're applying to, what their strengths are, and try to connect with the residents to find out what they love most about their program. So I think these are some of the tips that I feel really helped me in my journey and helped me get where I am today. And I wish all of you the best of luck for the future math seasons.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Kompal. Your tips mean a lot. We have one of the username for interesting videos. He or she says, find a buddy, anybody, golden words. Yeah, if you have any questions for Dr. Kompal, please send it in the comment section below. We will try to provide the answer. One of the members, Ghulam Hussain Mahato, he is asking, could you talk about combined med-pediatrics residency?
So I actually only applied for pediatrics residency, and I haven't done much research into the med-peds residency, but you can definitely look on the NRMP website for their data and reports on the previous cycles and what they consider the most important factors and the score requirements that they look for.
Okay, another question from Steph. Open houses are great sources of info. How did you find them, or around what month do they usually occur? Not all program post dates is what he or she is asking.
Yeah, so I think most of the open houses happened around, I would say August, September, and I think some of them even went into October. It's mainly right before the interviews start and before people submit in their applications. And it was really helpful for me, even though it was at, since I'm in India, the timings were very different. Some of them would happen in the middle of the night, but it was definitely worth attending to just because I was able to meet other applicants on those platforms and as well as get an idea of what each program is offering and if that aligns with my goals of what I would like to see in a residency program. So definitely try to attend as many as you can, and you can find out about programs' open houses through their Instagram pages or their own websites.
All right, thank you, Dr. Kompal.
Thank you.
Okay, so coming up next, we have Dr. Joshua Fernandez. It's an USING in Los Angeles. It's an incoming PGY1 neurology resident. And as a recent graduate from St. George University, he has been working at his local hospitals in Lynewood, Compton, and San Bernardino to help the underprivileged patients in Los Angeles. In addition to practice medicine, he was a former professional baseball player. He also now runs his own entrepreneurship fitness program, helping young athletes to get faster and stronger, and to help them obtain athletic scholarship from across the country and to help pay for their college education. He's here to help all of the IMGs aiming to become doctors in the US by sharing his story and giving a few tips that help him match. Let's welcome Dr. Joshua.
Hi, everyone. It's been a real pleasure listening to all your stories. Just FYI, since we're all IMGs, it's really nice to have a community where we kind of all understand, how difficult the process can be and how different it could be from the US and the US DOs. But a little bit about myself. I always kind of saw myself as a very atypical applicant. I am a US IMG. I'm from Los Angeles. But before I came or went into medical school, I played professional baseball. I also did stand-up comedy, so I was kind of like in the business in Hollywood and performing with one of my best friends. He is a big-time stand-up comic. He kind of travels all over the world. And there was a little moment there. I was like, do I want to be a doctor? Or do I want to make people laugh? And I was like, so it was kind of like a toss-up for a little bit, but I'll go deeper into it later, but it really came down to life choices. And, being also a first generation American, my family is from Costa Rica. I really wanted to be the first person in my family to be a doctor. And I felt like that was really important, especially in a country that's still kind of fighting for equality in a lot of different aspects of society. And it was just nice to, be that first generation doctor in my family, Spanish speaker from a community where, we don't get a lot of representation. About my entrepreneurship, I mean, all this stuff that I did really led to the success that I had, during interview season and communicating with programs, because I wasn't just a typical applicant. It's like, and I had some program directors tell me that. They're like, most of the time I got these people coming in, they're like, oh yeah, I did like, 400 case reports. I traveled to like Antarctica and fed the penguins. They gotta go off in a tangent how amazing they are, of how they give back. And then I was kind of just like, yeah, I played professional baseball. I traveled, I partied, I got to live life. And then now I want to help people. And that kind of, threw them off a little bit. Usually the first questions I got on the interview trail was, why would you quit baseball and come become a doctor? And, it was always a kick, a nice conversation starter. But, during my baseball time, I realized that, sports is a very small window and it closes up pretty fast compared to being a professional. You could be a professional until you're like 70 or 80. Your body starts to deteriorate over time. And that was like, one thing I also wanted to learn is like, how can I increase my longevity, not just, mentally, but physically. And I felt like the only way to really do that is to dive deeper into my education. If you learn about the body, you can manipulate the body, you can manipulate the systems, you can manipulate your cells, oxygen, food. And that kind of led me into that. But, right before I got to med school, I always loved telling people this, after all my successes and matching into a UC system in California, I failed my MCAT 3 times. I got a 488, a 482, and then a 488 again. And the second time I studied. So I did worse. And I was like, what? I don't think I can give you a DOS. I might as well just go back to stripping or something, dance on the pole, make some money that way, because clearly it's not going to be a doctor. So, the St. George came in, and someone, a family friend of mine, told me about the Caribbean schools. I had never heard about the Caribbean schools. They're like, oh, you're going to be USIMG, life is going to be more difficult. I had absolutely no idea what that meant. I'm like, whatever. I was like, maybe just sign me up. I was like, I want to be a doctor. Don't really care what this USIMG thing makes zero sense. People were trying to explain to me, like, yeah, as a USIMG, you could get a 220, but then if a USMD gets a 220, he's better. That made no sense to me. It was like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. But as I went on my trail, I was like, oh, I could see now why there's this stigma. It's ridiculous, but it's just an ego thing, and you kind of just have to get, past it. But once you kind of accept it and then start to build your application and build, who you are, you can surpass a lot of those, obstacles that, unfortunately were placed in front of you by people who you'll never meet, or probably really not that important, just people trying to get money and make themselves sound important. But when you make it, you are that much better of a doctor, of, a human being, because you've been through, you went into the mud, you played in the dirt, and you realize how hard it was. And so when you talk to these patients, you can empathize with them, and they can empathize with you, because they realize you're somebody they could connect with. You're not just some super brilliant doctor who got like, a 600 on their MCAT, and then there's just absolutely no communication with each other. You just sound like an encyclopedia. And so when you kind of go like, yeah, I failed the MCAT, they're like, oh yeah, I failed my SATs. You start having a conversation, they're like, yeah, okay. So, yeah, you have diabetes, you got to stop eating so much sugar. And they're like, oh yeah, you're right. Then you guys kind of have a little conversation, kind of laugh with each other. And that personality and interaction is really important in the medical field today, because I think there's a huge disconnect in terms of patients and doctors. And to be able to connect with them, really, you cure the patient, not only in the office, but when you have that personality and that connection, you stay with them as they go home. The whole thing is not just to make them listen to you as you're in the clinic, it's also to make them listen when they're at home, hanging out with the friends, before they go out on a Friday night and go to a hookah bar and like eat, fast food at 2 a.m. Like, you're like, oh, Dr. Josh said I shouldn't do that. I had a conversation, I remember him. It's not just the same old ABC conversation, and then they totally forget, then they see in 6 months, and you're like, yeah, I didn't listen to anything you said, which a lot of patients do. So all this, I know I apologize, I could go all over the place sometimes, but I'll try, stick to it. But yeah, so the MCAT, I made it through the Caribbean. I didn't have the greatest foundation in medicine because I was doing XYZ, before medical school. So I was kind of playing catch up, which was kind of nice because it forced me to really understand the foundation of medicine. And so by the time I got the clinicals, I had really forced myself to start from the bottom up again. There was no cheating. There was no shortcuts. I had to really learn all the basic foundations of medicine to become a good clinician. And so I went into step 1 and step 2. Step 1, I got a 223. Step 2, I got a 234. Not terrible, not great, but just right there in the competitive stage where, I could really make a name for myself in one place or another. I was able to honor all my shelves and I did well on all my tests. And oh, by the way, I also have 2 kids. I have a 3-year-old and 1-year-old. So I learned how to organize and kind of balance things. And so to kind of learn how to organize well when you have kids, obviously, I'm not telling you to go have kids, but if you have kids or you have other responsibilities, if you learn to organize early, when you go into residency, it'll be much easier to kind of put things together. You show the programs that you're like, yeah, I was able to, categorize the importance of everything. And then so when they meet you, they're kind of go like, oh, this guy or this woman really has their shit together. They're like, they could do all of this stuff and still go home and study, go take care of their parents, take care of their mental health, go exercise, and that's going to be a good fit for their program. And going into neurology, I also want to, voice how atypical I am again in so many ways that, there's not a cookie cutter medical student or doctor. I changed my specialty choice 7 times before I landed on neurology. I thought I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon because everyone told me, I look like just like one of those meatheads kind of thing that when they said orthopedic pods are always like, athletic people. And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I'm an orthopod. Then I tried surgery, hated it. It was the worst time of my life. And I'm pretty sure that everyone has their favorite specialty. I don't think anyone is wrong to choose a specialty, but for me, it was not the right fit. I thought it was, but that's why it's so important to go through rotations because you really see what you really like. It's so different to see things on Instagram or on TV or to see your buddy who's like a surgeon or a pediatrician or whatever the case is. And then you actually try and you live the lifestyle for those 6 or 12 weeks. And you're like, can I do this for the rest of my life? If it's yes, go for it. If it's no, absolutely cross it off your list. If you're like, I'm not sure, do electives. That's what you do away electives. You try other things, you kind of build on it. You have conversations with the attendees. You get to learn why they do it. Do they get to learn one of my favorite questions I ask attendees are like, hey, do you regret being, XYZ? And then some people are like, yeah, I absolutely hate this. And some people are like, no, we'll do this again. And I listened to that. I was like, okay, do I want to be happy like him or do I want to be miserable like her? I have to really, picture myself in their shoes because a lot of their experiences tend to be the same as you follow through because, the healthcare system in America is still changing. It's still not that great for doctors, nurses, NPs, the whole, the payment system, how the referrals, it's difficult. So some things you can't change. And so you have to really listen and talk to your attendees about that. And so I went from ortho, trauma surgery, anesthesiology. Obviously I figured if I don't like surgery, I don't want to work with surgeons. So I don't want to do anesthesiology either. But I went to OBGYN. I heard it's a very difficult work-life balance and I have kids. So that was another thing I had to really figure out, what do I want in my life? Do I want balance in work-life balance? Do I want to spend time with kids? Then I went to radiology. You hear it's a great pay. You hear it's, a lot of time at home. But then when I sat in the dark room, I felt like I was missing out on a lot of things. Once you actually sit in that hot seat and kind of experience radiology, you realize it is for you or it's not for you. And then I thought about maybe gastro. Then I finally landed on neuro in September as I was applying for residency. And I was like, I'm going to take a chance because I've tried everything else and I have not been happy at all with it. So I was like, I'm going to take a shot in the dark. I'm going to apply to neurology as my primary and apply to internal medicine just because it has a lot of fellowships. So I was like, worst case scenario, if I land in internal medicine, I have choices I can make later on in my career. I tried in a neurology elective in September, at the end of September and October and November. And I found out time was going by. To me, when I'm enjoying something, time flies. And when I was in my outpatient clinic and inpatient with neurology, I got there like 6:37 a.m. and all of a sudden it was like 2 p.m. and my attendee's like, hey, it's time for you to go home. I was like, oh my God, that was so fast. I was like, I must have been having a good time because I didn't realize time even, went by so quickly. So to me, that was like my sign. I was like, I wasn't bored. I wasn't looking at the clock. I wasn't dreading seeing a patient. So for me, I had to find my different way to find out, if that was really the specialty for me. And a lot of people ask questions. How do you know it's neurology? How do you know it's OB/GYN? How do you know? You have to experience. You have to put yourself in that person's shoes, live through that lifestyle, like from when they first clock in, when they clock out, do some of the really hard patients, go through it. Maybe even get yelled at by a patient because some specialties get yelled at by certain people who come in all the time, and that's like their everyday life. You're like, do I want to deal with this? Do I want to get sued every day? Do I want to deal with with the anesthesiologists, CRNAs? You have people battling each other in terms of who they think is the better practitioner. There are certain things that you cannot avoid, and you need to place yourself in that, so that way when you go into residency and you become that physician, you're not blindsided and you're not going back like, God, I wish someone told me this. I wish I had saw this. I would have changed my mind, because you don't want to change your mind. I know some people have in the past. There's a bunch of data about that, but it's very difficult. You want to kind of make that choice right the first time. And so going into application season, my biggest thing that I really held on to was my networking and my letters of recommendations. I was able to build really good relationships with my attendees. I was buddy with them. One of my neurologists, he wrote me a letter of recommendation. He looked like Antonio Banderas to me, so I call him Dr. Zorro. And we got really close to each other. He wrote a very personable letter of recommendation that everyone on my interview trail, they spoke about. They're like, wow, he really liked you, XYZ. I met another person who wrote my letter of recommendation. I met him from another attendee, and so he actually was never an elective. I just hung out with him every Monday for 10 months. I would go over there. He was a neuroradiologist, and we would hang out. He would teach me all the outpatient. We would do breast biopsies, thyroid biopsies, do CTs, x-rays, and I would just learn esophagograms. We would just learn every Monday. It was outside of my electives. I did this on my own, off the table or under the table. And it really gave me exposure to more neuro, and it gave me a very, very personable and very great letter of recommendation also. So that's another one of my advice is you don't have to necessarily be in the elective or do a rotation with a doctor to actually get a good letter of recommendation. If you could spend time with them outside the clock, it actually looks better because you're actually doing this outside of your time. And they see that. They see the drive, they see the passion, and you get a really good, not only good connections, but a really good letter of recommendation. And I'm trying to hit like all the pieces that, questions that people usually ask is same thing with personal statement. Some people say, I'm boring, or, I have nothing going on in my life that could be interesting. I was like, you are an interesting person. Everyone has gone through a different pathway in this life. So say that experience, because you never know who's going to find that experience valuable. And I know everyone has there's certain programs that they really want. Sometimes they're not going to reach out to you, and that's a good thing. Okay. I know people get all butthurt saying oh my God, this program didn't reach out to me. I was like, it's a connection. It's a family. You don't want to be in a program where you're just going to disconnect, because that's going to be 3, 4, 5 years of your life that you're going to be with people that you do not connect with. When you end up matching in the algorithm, you match there for a reason. There was the perfect fit, whether it's number 1, number 4, number 9, number 13, wherever you end up is where you're supposed to be at. And I know sometimes it's hard for people to understand that, but once you go through it, you really realize that that was the actual family that wanted you. Everyone else that you wanted might not have wanted you, and that's a good thing. Like I said, it wasn't a good fit. So don't take it personally on match day if you don't end up at your number 1. It's meant to be where you're supposed to end up and build, relations with that family and those colleagues. And the last tip of advice that I have during interview season that I will give is don't trust a thing program directors email you. They are trying to match as well, and they will butter you up and say all kinds of great things that, I can't wait to match you. I can't wait to you end up in our program. We loved your interview. You're so unique, blah, 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 blah. They are full of it. They are just trying to map because they don't want to go into soap either. So they're trying to, reel you in. They're business people. It's a whole business. So go into, when you do your rank order, rank who you want. And that's something I wish I had did. And I got lucky because I actually ended up at the program that I actually felt the best with, but I actually didn't match the number one. I actually ranked them number 4. So I had 4 California schools that I really liked, and they were all in the same area. So I was like, if I end up in my top 4, I'll be very, very happy. It was, I don't care about saying it. It was UCLA, USC, UC Irvine, and UC Riverside. They were all great programs. They're all UC programs, very good neurology connections. But UC Riverside, I actually had the best connection with. But the reason I didn't choose them is, number one, is because they didn't have a housing stipend. And, for me, I thought that would be really important considering the economy in certain areas of the country. You really have to consider that stuff. LA is an expensive town and food's expensive. So, and I have a family. So that's something you have to consider. It's not just about prestige. And my problem is I got caught up in the prestige and I ranked people based on what I think will look great. But when I really took a step back and really looked at it, some of those programs don't have the happiest residents. They tell you straight up, they're like, yeah, I work hard every day. I don't see family. And then you kind of just like, whatever. I just want the prestige. I want to know that I want people to know I go there. But when you really think about it, it's like, do you want to go through that? That's 4 or 5 years, 6 years of your life that you don't see your wife, your girlfriend, your family, your friends, going out to dinner. Like, those are sacrifices that you need to be sure you want to make. Is it worth it to post on Instagram that I matched at this program and look great for a day or a week or 2 with all your buddies and get all amazing likes, or match at a program that you're really happy with, and for the next 4 or 5 years, you're really, really happy with your choice? So don't get caught up in the prestige. Rank who you have the best connection with, because I promise you that's going to be the best time of your life if you end up with people that understand you and with a program director that wants you. And also pay attention to the program coordinators, because they give a lot of secret intel by the way they speak to you, or like the communication that it shows that you connect with everyone on that ladder up until July 1st. And so that's something that I caught after the fact, and I'm really happy that I ended up where I'm at, because I got lucky, and I'm very, really happy that I ended up there. And I just don't want people to make that mistake going forward after me. And go with your gut feeling. Your gut feeling is never wrong. And I think that's pretty much it. I think I've really talked you guys' ear off, and I'm sorry for that. But I hope I was entertaining, and I hope I gave you some information, and you guys can ask all the questions you like. I'll be more than happy to answer anything.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yoshua. You actually have an interesting journey. And actually, I'm Dominican, and as a Dominican, I have to ask you, how, since being a baseball player, when did you know what, baseball is not my thing? I actually want to be a doctor. Like, how and when you think I want to be a doctor?
I told everyone on the interview trail this. It actually wasn't me. It was actually my mom. I had finished playing my 2nd year of summer ball with the Arizona Diamondbacks in Surprise in Scottsdale, Arizona. And I got a contract offer to go to Japan to go play baseball. And I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm going to go to Japan. I'm going to go, have more fun. And then my mom kind of pulled me aside the day before I was going to go have that contract conversation. She's like, listen, mijo. She's like, I'm so proud of you. She's like, you've done so much amazing work. She's like, you've made it further than all your buddies from Little League. You go up the pyramid. You're the last one standing of everyone in this community. She's like, but you need to get a real job. And I'm like, what? I was like, that is a real job. I was like, I'm a professional baseball player. I was like, why can't you just be happy with it? And then I got annoyed because my brother's a professional soccer player and he was playing in South Korea. And I was like, you never tell Joe to get a job. That's my brother's name. You never told Joe. He's like, Joe's different. He's your little brother. He's still lost. I'm like, I was like, of course, he's lost. The Latino moms always protect the babies and always want the oldest one to get everything done. So that was kind of actually the catalyst that pushed me into, understands. Like, she told me, she's like, as you get older, it gets harder to study and to, really concentrate, because she became a nurse later on in life. And she's like, especially if you're planning on having kids, she's like, it could get difficult. So why not, you succeeded so far in your career. She's like, be happy with that, retire, and now go become a doctor. She's like, you could be a doctor for the rest of your life. She's like, you can't be a baseball player forever. And I was really happy that I listened to her, because, my mom's one of my, pretty much my role model, my hero. She really taught me how to work hard. She, crossed the border into America, way back when. She was illegal for a while. She married, she studied, she did the whole American dream thing. And she did it for me and my brother. And the last thing I want to do was to ruin an image for her and ruin the sacrifice that she had. And I was like, you know what? I played baseball for as long as I could, never become a doctor, and, prove to my mom that, her beliefs in me were right, that I can do it. And that's how I ended up going from professional baseball to being a doctor. So I chose two really difficult professions. I hope my mom's proud of it.
Amazing. Dr. Sebas is saying hi here, and he mentioned that there is a funny story and that you guys met even before all of this process.
Yeah, we actually have a mutual friend here in Los Angeles. Her name's Christina. She's a singer, really great singer. And I was just kind of just talking to Christina, and she's like, hey, I have a friend who it's like, she didn't really explain it. She's like, he knows something about IMGs. I'm like, thanks, Christina. That really helps. I was like, sure, yeah, send me to him. I was like, we'll connect. And then she kind of connected us, and then I started talking to him, and that's when I really saw everything that he's been doing. I was like, this is actually really great. I really like the platform that he has. I really like, what he's doing for the community, especially the IMG community, the Latino community. And so it was really great that we were able to connect, from a mutual friend, one in a million, how that was going to
happen. In the comments, they're saying that you still look like the ortho bros, and also.
I know, I get that all the time.
Okay, so also they're asking, what were some things that you looked for in a program besides connection and housing? They need help to set like the parameters and like.
Yeah, so some of the things I look for, obviously, besides just connecting with them, personally, like an A-B relationship, was I really was interested in their life outside the hospital. I would kind of pull them aside, or I'll ask them for their phone number, during the interviews, or like the group rooms where sometimes there's multiple residents. I'll send a direct message like, hey, can I text you and ask you some questions to make it a little bit more personable? And I'll just tell them straight, I was like, look, I have a family. Do you have a family, or do you have a girlfriend? Do you have a family? Like, how often do you get to see them? How often do you get to go to the movies? How often do you get to go get boba? How often do you just get a moment for yourself? And, there was a lot of places that I, initially that I wanted at the top, that, their residents were just like, look, man, like I'm at work like 6 days a week, the day off I sleep. I'm like, that sucks. So I was like, I don't want to do that. I was like, I know you have to work hard in residency, but I was like, I want a life too. And so when I really hit with residents, they're like, oh yeah, I went to Disneyland. Like, yeah, we had a little get together. We went to snowboarding. They're like, yeah, yesterday I went for a run, hung out with I did brunch. I'm like, brunch? I was like, you never hear brunch with a resident. So I was like, those are like things that I really put together. And I was like, okay, these have, not only do they work hard and they have good passing rates for like step 3 and some other boards, but they also are happy outside of work. And to me, having a work-life balance shows that there has been progression into a very healthy lifestyle in that hospital, in that community, instead of that old school way of thinking of like, yeah, you have to suffer for 3 or 4 years and then become a doctor to have life. That's not conducive to anything. You're hurting yourself and you're hurting your patients, and you're kind of hurting the whole program in general if you're always sleepy and not really paying attention. So to have a good conversations and seeing that there is good life outside the hospital, that was to me one of the very most important things that I was looking for.
Thank you, Dr. Joshua, for your input.
Of course.
Thank you, Dr. Joshua. We loved the way you narrated your story, actually, with such a high energy, and we are hoping to meet you soon in the upcoming IMG event Philippines. Thank you again.
I would love to. Thank you, guys.
Welcoming Dr. Jyoti Verma, a 2019 graduate of the Government Medical College in Patiala, She began her career as a medical officer in a community hospital there in 2021. She completed her steps and 2 months of USE in 2022, and she was given the opportunity to present an oral abstract at the European Society of Cardiology meeting in Barcelona. She actively participated in the PIMG MedEd group as well. Tonight, she'll be discussing the value of preparation and time management, as well as how she transitioned from preparing from home country residency to the US residency and how she could add it to her advantage. Welcome, Dr. Jyoti.
Hi, thank you for having me. Oh, my video is not on. Wait, 1 second. Hi, thank you for having me and thank you for all the kind words. And hi, everyone. A lot of my fellow panelists have shed a lot of light on how to do the preparation, what are the tips for the interviews. But what main message I want to give through this conversation is the story that's unique to me. I know that if you start early on in the journey, that's great, but I'm a 2019 graduate and I didn't even plan on doing USMLE until the pandemic hit. So I don't think that was the perfect timing to, transition to something like that when you don't even have a visa. But yeah, I 100% knew I wanted to do it. I wanted to practice holistic medicine. And I decided to switch to USMLE in 2021. So even though I did not start in a conventional way, one thing that really helped me to match was making a timeline and sticking to it. When I started my preparation late in 2021, I knew that I wanted to apply for the 2023 match. So I knew that I have just 1 year, less than a year, because I started in November and you are supposed to get done with everything by September. So I knew I just had less than a year and I had to take 2 steps, do US clinical experience. But I think what helped me the most do it was the timeline. I just did everything in the reverse order. So I decided that this is the time I want to apply. I realized that this, I can devote 3 months to step 1 or 2 months to step 2, and I have to do at least, I wanted to do 3 clinical rotations, but visa and everything, I was only able to manage to do 2. So that is one thing that really kept me sane also, because I had this timeline, I had to stick to it. And I did it in a very non-conventional way. I did, people say first aid is the holy book, you have to do it. There's no way you're going to be able to manage to do step 1 without first aid. But I had already studied so much for my home country residency, I did not use it. I just straight away dived into the UWorld question bank. I prepared for 2 months and I did it. So I just want to convey this message to everyone that your story, your journey, your trail, it can be entirely different. There is no one single right path for USMLE. You just need to know that you want to do it 100%. And then you can carve your own journey or your own path for it and your own methods. So, but one thing which I feel is most important for everyone is to make your own plan and to stick to it. You need to, know how you're going to do it. It can be entirely different from everyone else. You might not even find anyone else doing it the same way you're doing it, but that doesn't mean it's not the right path. So that is the main message I want to give anyone. And if anyone is on the same path and you are having doubts, it's a very common thing in India. I am presently in India, I belong to India, to not switch to this decision, not to think that, no, I'm into my home country residency now. How will I transition? How will I make this decision? Okay, it's okay to, just keep going on the path. But believe me, it's okay to switch. If you are 100% sure you want to do it, if that makes you happy, just take that leap of faith and don't let the fear of the uncertainties cloud your decision, and, just dive into it and things start working for you. Okay, and that's all I have to say. Thank you, and all the best to everyone watching for your match or whatever future endeavors.
All right. We have a question from the public. Geeta Bandari. She's asking how to prepare for behaviorist interview questions.
Okay. So regarding behavioral interview questions, I think it goes like how you prepare for every other interview question. What I did to prepare for my interview questions was I just, downloaded a list of Google of questions. I took my own sweet time, sat with it, and tried to, come up with answers for them. So I think it's the best way to prepare for any interview question is to, give yourself some time to prepare for it. It's not like you have an interview next day and you just, I have an interview in the morning, let me just, pull all-nighter, do those questions. You need to give yourself that time that if someone asks you that question, what do you want to convey about yourself from that question? So that is a very important question to ask to yourself. That what is the message you want to convey about yourself to that person from that question or from your answer? So what helped me was that I took, a good time. I took a notebook. I wrote a single question on one page. And whenever I had something on my mind, I just jotted it down a little bit. And that is how I prepared. And then I also practiced a lot. I practiced with my friends. I practiced with some mentors. I practiced with friends who already matched because I started my journey late. There are some of my batchmates who already matched. So that is what I did. I took my own sweet time. I prepared myself. And then I did a lot of practice. And that's how you prepare for any question, be it behavioral or non-behavioral. I hope that helps.
Yes, and another is asking, when did you do your electives, the clinical experiences?
Yeah, so I gave my step 1 in January 2022, and I went for my first elective in March 2022. Then I came back to my home country. I gave my step 2 in July and did another elective in August. So I was able to get one outpatient experience and another observership, which was both inpatient and outpatient. So I just had 2 months of US clinical experience. And I also get that asked about a lot, like a lot of interviewers ask me like 2 months, it's not enough but yeah, that's how I sailed my boat.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jyoti.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
We thank you and appreciate your time you have spent.
Thank you so much. So next we have Dr. Soumyadi back. It's an incoming PGY1 internal medicine resident. He has graduated from Bankura Samilani Medical College in India. He made the decision to take his steps soon after completing med school with the goal of pursuing residency in the US. However, due to immigration to Canada, he couldn't work long as a physician in India and had to work in Canada for a while to pay for his exams and applications. The biggest challenge was the finances, especially since the decision to take the USMLE applied to both him and his spouse. He is with us to talk about the challenges of matching as an older IMG and couple matching as a visa-requiring IMGs. Despite the common belief that it is impossible, Dr. Soumyadi believes that couple matching has numerous advantages for certain couples like themselves and help them secure interviews. Let's welcome our Dr. Soumyadi back.
Hello. Hi, guys. I know my name can be a tongue twister, so you can just call me Sam, if that's okay. That's okay too. So yeah, clearly my parents didn't name me to pursue a career in the United States. But anyways, so what happened is that when I was in med school, right, I made the decision to pursue USMLE quite early on during med school, but I unfortunately didn't have any information about USMLE, and my dad was working in Canada at that time, so there was a chance for us to kind of immigrate to Canada. So I took that opportunity and I kind of like, you know what, I'm just going to go there and figure it out. Pretty soon I figured out that this pathway is very expensive. And then, and I think I want to talk about a few points that the previous speakers haven't, have not mentioned in details about things that you can do during the challenges that you face residency, especially if you do not have a well thought out plan or a well thought out process to take your steps and plan out your rotations, application, and everything like that. So as you can see, I started my USMLE journey well after graduation. I'm a 2013 graduate, and I matched in my 9th year, or technically 10th year after graduation, and same for my wife. So I'm by all means, I'm considered an old graduate. So after 5 years, what I felt is it didn't really matter what your year of graduation was. So if you're like me, you're applying 5 years post med school. So at that point, it becomes imperative for you to kind of build your CV around what you can do and what you can showcase that makes you unique. Because if you apply within 5 years, that's very well and good. You have a good chance of matching into certain specialties, especially I think internal medicine is very friendly to graduates who match within 5 years or try to apply within 5 years. But if you're like me who applied later on, after 5 years, you should kind of sit down and take your time to decide what you can showcase in your CV that actually kind of stands out. So for a bit about me and my wife, we both had STEP scores in the 230s and 220s, so it was very similar. And then we had no attempts on our steps. We did take the CS exam, so we didn't. Our ECMG certificate doesn't expire. And then I also took my step 3, and my wife did as well, before we kind of applied for residency this year. What I figured out is what I was lacking on my CV was research experience and recent USC. I mean, I kind of had everything else because I've been working, having worked in Canada, I was working here as a physician assistant in general internal medicine as an outpatient intern in an outpatient internal medicine clinic, and I had 3 years of experience. So I realized that is going to kind of balance my lack of maybe home country experience or a home country residency training. So I can showcase that I have recent experience in a North American clinical setting, which gives me insight into the patient population, the communication, the nuances that you face in everyday day-to-day practice. It also meant that I might have picked up a few bad habits having worked with attending. So it also meant that I have to show the residency program directors that I'm teachable. Especially that's one of the biggest worries that program directors have if you're an older graduate. That's what I was told. I asked for feedback, and that's what I was told, that if you're teachable or not. So yeah, what we did is I took us step 3. We got into a paid research program where we were taught about research. We connected with a lot of mentors, and then most of the people who were in this program ended up with 5 or 6 publications. I ended up with 13. Because from that program, I met with a few candidates who were like-minded like me, and we wanted to get case reports and publications out. And then we worked outside of those hours to get a lot of publications. So that definitely stood out. And we took our step 3 and did kind of well. I would say I scored about a 230 on the step 3, so which is considered, I think, a good score. And that was brought up during my interview processes as well. So, and then, you have to have a story, right? What was happening for these many years? Why are you applying this late? And then what you bring to the program, and how do you justify even pursuing this residency after so many years? And why didn't you choose something else? And so you have to spin it in a positive way. And I think it's mostly true for people who are still applying after 5, 6, 7 years after med school. They really want it. So I think a personal statement which is catered to these kind of things help. And then I think you can also utilize your letters of recommendations a lot better as well. A lot, if you want to do it. So for us, me and my wife, we realized that we have to sell ourselves as a couple and not as individual candidates, because that way we will secure more interviews. So all program directors, they want to fill their spots, so they definitely want to fill their spots, but they would still let spots go unfilled if they do not find the right candidate. but they really like a story where, you know, they know that you have a support system. So my biggest support system is my wife, and I hers. In our rotations, we did all together. And then we both introduced ourselves. We did our observations and everything together. And then, like, you know, they saw how well we worked together. And the last observership that I went to, I got 3 interviews from the same city. And I worked with attendings in that city. And we worked with different attendings in different hospitals in that same city. And both of us got 3 interviews from the same city. So that was my recent clinical experience. And I did schedule it in a way that I was doing that rotation during August, September, which is like peak application season. So there's no chance they're going to forget you when you send in your application, because you are one of the most recent candidates that they have seen. So if you can do it, that works out well for you. So that's what we did. Our personal statement also mentioned about our journey, you know, and how we have a support system and everything. Like, you know, briefly about your spouse, if you can do that, if you have similar profiles and you're applying to the same specialty, that does help. But, you know, mostly speak about yourself, obviously, you know, what your positives are and everything. The other thing is connections. When one of you secures an interview, do reach out to programs to tell them, hey, you like my profile, you know, my spouse has also applied to your program. Do you mind like taking a look at his or her profile? Because we are very similar, we'd like to see in the same place. 3 out of 3 places actually offered that to us after we reached out. So it does help, and reach out early because it's about to fill out fast as well. Now, as I was saying, right, as an older graduate, you have to do a few things differently. So, you know, you have to build meaningful experiences as older graduates. So when you're sending in a letter of recommendation, ideally, you want it from a person that has known you for more than a month, because rotations are actually a month long, wherever you go, rotations like clerkships, observerships, or whatever you call it. You're going there for a month. And then what happens is that you can be the best, like, you know, best medical student or an IMG for a month, but that does not translate to long-term, like, sustainable, like, you know, long-term relationship or a long-term, like, you know, knowledge of that candidate on how they have, like, you know, overcome adversities and stuff like that. So it's very good to have very strong LORs from your rotations. But I figured if I have to kind of like paint something unique about me, I have to use letters of recommendations that from attendings or, like, you know, who know me a little longer. So the one letter of recommendation that I chose was from an attending that I worked with back in 2018. He was a program director in family medicine. And I reached out to him. I'd kept in touch with him through LinkedIn and, like, you know, just emails and everything. But I reached out to him this cycle and I asked him that, hey, doctor, would you be able to, like, you know, update the letter of recommendation that you wrote for me in 2018? I'm applying to internal medicine this year. But do you just want to mention that, you know, how I've kept in touch with you and how you have always known that, you know, I was passionate about internal medicine, and, you know, that, you know, maybe you had hoped that I would apply to an internal medicine program in your hospital. He did that for me. So that shows that, you know, I still keep in touch with people who I worked with back in 2018 and they remember me. It was a small request that I put in, but that was brought up during my interview. Second thing, I used another letter of recommendation from an attending that I worked with for 3 years. That is the letter of recommendation from Canada that I got from my internal medicine attending. What I mentioned to her to write on my letter of recommendation was not how good I was in the clinic and not how I was, like, you know, like my knowledge, medical knowledge, research skills, and all that kind of stuff. What I wanted her to, like, focus on was my journey, or in all, like, in a sense, another personal statement written on my behalf by that attending. So she basically talked about my struggles, how I overcame them, how I became interested in internal medicine over time, how my passion is, and how I am with patients, and how I've learned to, like, you know, love this subject, and how I'm always, like, you know, eager to learn. So that was the third one. The third letter of recommendation that I had was from my research attending, who I'd worked with for about 10 months, although virtually, but he was able to speak about how I worked hard during September to submit 4 projects on time so that we could actually, like, include that on our CV, how I actually helped, like, you know, group, like, you know, help our fellow researchers like, write the manuscripts, review everything, stay up late and all that kind of stuff. So it showed leadership qualities, right? But that is also an attending that I've known for 6 months or so. And the last letter of recommendation that I got was from an attending during the last rotation that I did in August. And that was like, a good letter of recommendation with about recent clinical skills and stuff like that. So I'm saying that you need room to play around, even with your application, and you can cater it accordingly so that, none of your experiences go to waste. The other thing that I would say for older graduates is that, people tend to disregard their home country experiences a lot. My wife had worked in India in 2014 and 2015 in a pediatric, pediatric hospital, which is one of the largest leading hospitals in pediatrics in India. And that was actually brought up during the interview. And that was seen as a positive because she had already worked in a residency program for although not as a resident, she was working as a medical officer, but because she had worked with them, that was brought up during interviews, like she had worked there for about 10 months. So I'm saying, do not disregard anything that you do in your home country. Put it in, even if it's one line, just put it in. It's for them to figure out if it's important or not. But, your home country research, even if you did one poster presentation, put it in. If you had one experience where you went somewhere for a month, if it was a volunteer experience, put it in. Make sure you include everything on your CV, and that adds up. And also, lastly, it's interview skills. I think 5 or 6 interviews is enough to match. If you have 5 or 6 interviews, if you are good and you know how to speak and you know how to connect with people, I think that's enough to match. I think you need to understand that at the end of the day, people are looking for people who will work well in a team, who will question when they need to question, and not just be somebody that comes there as a know-it-all. Like a lot of people, obviously, if you're going for USMLE, have a lot of clinical experience, you're very knowledgeable, you're very educated, but at the end of the day, the people who are teaching you are your seniors. So you need to be respectful of that, and you need to come out as a teachable person, as somebody, and then somebody who's willing to work hard. Not only that, but also a team player. So if you can convey those things during interviews, that would go a long way. And you need to read the room, what it is. If it's a program that's very formal, be formal. If it's a program, the program that I matched to, the APD, and I talked about barbecue for 20 minutes. That's all I did. I didn't even speak about medicine with him. All he asked me was about barbecue. So I'm just saying, read the room and see how it goes. And you have to be able to adapt during interviews, and that helps. So yeah, that's all. If anybody has any questions about how to stay motivated, how to support yourself financially, and do some things that help you match as an older graduate, I'm happy to answer. Or anything else as well, if I can.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sam. Looks like you covered a lot of common questions. If anyone has any questions. Yeah, looks like you covered, you actually covered one of the most common questions. And so thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Sam.
No problem. Thank you for having me. It was a wonderful experience.
So thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you to our speakers for taking the time to share your stories, for giving us advice, great advice. Our community is getting stronger and bigger every day. We are stronger together, and we will go far together. This is an initiative from Project IMG, so thank you, Dr. Sebastian, for connecting us all. Thank you, and see you guys on the next one. Stay tuned.
Thank you. And thank you for the team.
Thank you. Take care.
Who made it possible.
Bye-bye.
So I just ended the live. Okay.